Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is Scrapperlock Rants with Power Wash Simulator. We're cleaning an ancient statue. Um, yeah, I don't know why you would power wash an ancient statue that's thousands of years old because you'd probably destroy it, but that's okay. This is not really in character. So here we are, guys. This is the ancient statue, and we're gonna have to clean it up. And as we go, we're going to be doing a Let's Rant. Hang on a sec here. I just got a private message. All right, I'm back. Okay, so here we go. This is the statue that we're going to be cleaning, and I'm not sure what we got here. We got scaffold, got a ladder. Okay, we'll start at the bottom and work our way around and up. And as we go, I want to do a rant today. I don't know if it's a rant. We're going to talk today about situational versus general abilities. So this conversation comes from the Savage Worlds Discord, where we were having a conversation. I actually came in the middle of a conversation. I had really read the entire thing, the back scroll. It was in the morning, and the back scroll had been going on since before I'd awakened, I guess. So I guess I should have read the back scroll, but one of the people on the Discord is a swag creator, so he makes third-party products for Savage Worlds. And I guess he was in the middle of a conversation about some adjustment that he had to an edge in Savage Worlds in the core book that's called Common Bond. And in the Common Bond base edge, it gives you the ability to give bennies to other players. And that's pretty much, I think, all it does. And so, hang on a second. I think we need a little bit of sound on this, so let me just adjust the sound for a sec. Options, audio, yeah, just a little bit more. Let's see how that is. That's a little high. Oh, wait. Hang on. I do not have the sound coming through the headset. That's why it was too soft. Okay. Alright, so this should be good, I hope. Let me just check the sound on OBS. Seems like it's okay. Alright, so hopefully this will work out alright. Um, he was talking about Common Bond, and what Common Bond lets you do, I think, is just share bennies. I can give you a benny when you need it, right? And I guess he felt like it's not a good enough edge. It doesn't provide enough of a benefit to the person who has the Common Bond or to the party to even bother using it, and he felt like it wasn't enough of a benefit. And so he had created some kind of a house rule that was designed to make Common Bond better. And I think it allowed you to, like, essentially spawn the Benny that you were given to somebody else once a session or something like that. And so I didn't see all of that part of the conversation. I just sort of saw him saying that he didn't think it was all that great. And I said, oh, well, I actually think it's pretty good. And watching the Deadlands show on the Wildcards show on the Saving Throw channel, I saw Jordan Pridgeon, who had Common Bond, use it quite a number of times to great effect. And he said, well, you know, how often are you going to need it? Most of the time, players have their own bennies. And, you know, realistically, you only maybe use it once every couple of sessions. And I said, well, that's probably all that Jordan Pridgeon used it, but man, he certainly used it to good effect when he used it. And I said, you know, you're not going to give somebody bennies when they have one, right? So the whole thing about Common Bond is you're able to give a benny to somebody who has run out, and maybe they just got wounded and it can't soak wounds. And it might be such a wound that it would knock them out or kill them, and you can give them a benny to re-roll, and they don't have one. So, like, it's not going to work every session necessarily, but when it does work, boy, it's going to come in clutch. And he said, gee, I didn't really think about it that way. I may have to reconsider this rule. And then there was, you know, a lot of conversation about it. And this led me to think about a debate that we used to have in City of Heroes, actually, quite a lot. And there really seem to be sort of two positions to this. One position is that essentially situational powers are terrible because whenever the situation that they're designed to work in um, doesn't come up, they're effectively useless. And the other position is that situational powers and abilities are great because they give you something to do in certain situations that you would not otherwise have. Let's see here. Can I get that? Yeah, there we go. That's what I was trying to get. So, so what I want to do today is talk about situational versus general abilities and sort of when maybe you might want to have them and why it might be good to have one versus the other. So, so let's first define them. A situational ability, so a general ability is something that you can use all the time. It's something that will be in use in any given case in combat, anytime in City of Heroes, anytime the power is up. It could potentially be worth using. In D&D, you can use it in every battle or in every round, or if it's available, right? You may only be able to do it so many times a day, but when it's available, it's something that you can use whenever you want, right? So like casting a spell in D&D is not necessarily situational because you can cast a spell whenever you want, although certain spells only work in certain cases. Or being able to make an attack is not situational. On the other hand, something like an opportunity attack is situational because it only will happen when you're in melee and somebody tries to step out of that melee with you, right? And so something that gives you a bonus to your opportunity attack isn't going to be useful in every round of combat. It's only going to be useful in rounds of combat in which you are in melee with someone who's trying to step out of melee with you, and then it's useful. Right? So it's not going to work every round, or maybe even in every battle. And so some people feel like you shouldn't clog your character choices up with abilities that are only going to trigger once in a while, because you're taking them instead of taking things that are going to be useful all the time, right? And so if we think about City of Heroes, there are about, what is it? I think it's 24 powers that you get in City of Heroes, and no more than that. And if you go back to like the original game, it's clear here that the puzzle is going to be where do you put the stupid ladder and scaffold to try and hit all the crevices. I'm actually not a huge fan of this type of cleaning. I'd really much rather just have flat surfaces to clean, like in the subway. But this is the only one I've got. It's the only current option. So this is what we have to do. So where were we? So yeah, with situational abilities, you can't use them all the time, and like if you have something like in City of Heroes, you can only have 24 power choices, and we go back to like the days when you had to take Swift, Health, and Stamina as separate powers, right? And then you had Flight, and you had Hover or whatever that you had to take to get Flight. And so that's 5 powers, so that gives you 19. Well, there are 18 in your primary and secondary, right? 9 of each, but now suppose you want to take the prestige pool, like the prestige pool powers level, the ones that open after level 40. That's 3 or 4 more powers, right? 41, 44, 47, 49, it's 4 more powers. So that gets you down to like 15 powers you can take in your primary and secondary if you also want to take 2 movement powers, Swift, Health, Stamina, and 4 prestige pool powers, right? So you can't take everything in your primary and secondary. So one way or another, whether you're taking all of your primary and secondary and not taking some of the pool powers and prestige powers, or whether you're taking the pool and prestige powers and you're skipping some of the ones in your secondary, choosing to take some powers necessarily means that you're going to choose not to take other powers. So there's essentially an opportunity cost to taking powers. And you have to decide which powers are we going to take. So the argument is if you only get this handful of powers that you can take, right, you want to make sure that every power you take is going to be useful as often as possible. And so that was the argument against taking powers that are too situational or too specialized, right? That if you just take all of your attack powers and all of your defense powers and you just leave on your toggles and you use your attacks, you can use them all the time. And you've never taken a whole power and used it when as a power option for a power that you're only going to use occasionally, right? However, the counter argument to that is situational powers often can come in really handy when the situation they're meant to address comes up. Right? They can be very, very handy in those sorts of situations. And so, so I want to use the example of Warrior's Challenge, right? Or any taunt for a scrapper. Okay? The sort of, according to sort of the book, if you want to call it that, the kind of default assumptions of the players of City of Heroes, there's absolutely no point to taking a power like Warrior's Challenge in a scrapper, because scrappers are, hang on here, let me get this up. Scrappers are single target fighters. They aren't tanks, and they can draw at least as much aggro, aggression, hate, hostility toward them from just doing their attacks and doing damage, which also draws aggro, as they can from using a taunt. So it's pretty much always said, in sort of the conventional wisdom of City of Heroes, that there's really no point to getting taunt as a scrapper. And yet if you go back and watch my Let's Plays, you will see that I got Warrior's Challenge on Iron Phoenix and Silver Phoenix. I did it on both of them, and I got it as early as I could. I often would love to get it earlier, but yeah, there are some powers that are must-haves that I do first, like the Mez defense. So you have to ask yourself, well, as a scrapper, why do I want Warrior's Challenge? Well, because it's really good at pulling enemies, which helps solo, right, when you want to pull, at least early on. You don't need it when later on, right? But it also helps when you're in a group and you want to pull something, right? Because most of the player characters with ranged abilities, boy, I'm stupid. I could just walk onto this thing, right? Instead of using the ladder. Duh. Most of the characters with ranged abilities who could pull are squishies, controllers, defenders, blasters, right? And the way City of Heroes works, if you aggro something and you get it mad at you with an attack, it, even if you try to run back, it gets a free attack on you. And if you're a blaster and you don't have a lot of defenses, that could take you down. If it's got mez, if it knocks you down, then the other enemies come in and they start pounding you. And I've seen blasters and controllers get absolutely creamed with this. And I can remember one time when I was with my group, and we were in the 40s. It was during the first year of launch, I think. We were in the 40s. We were fighting Nemesis, and I don't think most of us had a huge amount of experience with Nemesis, and in particular, we didn't realize that Nemesis attacks are mostly AoE attacks. I guess we just didn't clock that or didn't think about it. And so it was me, a blaster, a controller, and a defender, I think. Might have been 2 blasters. But I know there was a controller and a defender with us. Because I can name the characters, and one was my best friend's character, and she was a defender, and then there was this other girl who's, I can't remember her character name, but she was a controller. Incantation, no, Incantation was a defender. Facade was the controller, and I can't remember who else. And so it might have been 2 defenders. Defenders are great at buffing and defending themselves and stuff, but AoEs can be pretty brutal in City of Heroes because a lot of defenses just don't defend you against the AoEs. And so there was this like double spawn or something of them, and there may have been snipers in the group, I can't remember, but there were certainly like lieutenants and stuff, and they're pretty accurate, the Nemesis guys. And so it was at a corner, and we're doing the corner pull, right? This is where I'll just show you here. So you're at a corner like this, you come around the corner, the enemies are over here, right? You come around the corner, you fire at one enemy, and you immediately go back, right? This aggroes him because he can't see you. He's going to run around here to get into line of sight, and over here are all of your buddies, and you surround and pound. And then you come back out, and you do it again, right? And so what happened at first was that our puller came out, shot. They're going to get a free shot back at you, and then you run back, right? Well, she got hit, and the Nemesis, a lot of their attacks are AoE, knockdown. Boom, she gets knocked down. And then bang, 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 the snipers all hit her, whatever, and she was just killed. Red line, dead. Okay, the other defender reses her, we bring her back, we try again. The other defender tries, the controller tries. The same thing keeps happening, they just keep getting creamed. So I said, you know what, guys, I have Warrior's Challenge, right? I have a taunt, let me pull, right? So they came around the corner with me. I don't know why they did this. They were standing right behind me. Maybe they were like right at the edge of the corner and I came to the corner. I don't remember. I taunted, right? It's ranged attack. I taunt them and they shot back at me. And because it was AoE, the other guys were in the... Hang on. The other guys were in the AoE radius and they both got killed. 2 or 3 of them got killed. I'm like, guys, don't stand next to me, right? I had AoE defense at that point. I was a martial arts reflex scrapper. My character had evasion, or whatever it is that's the toggle. And at the time, I think it was a base 20% defense. And the passive was a base 10, so unenhanced, it would have been 30% defense, and I'm sure I had enhanced it at that point. So I had like 40%, 45%. They're nearly floored, right? Against me. So eventually they just realized, okay, let's let Scrapper come out here and do this, and then we will come in, and lower the boom after the bad guys come around the corner, right? And so it was fine. And then that's what we learned to do. Since we didn't have a tank, right? We couldn't have the tank just dive in. And I couldn't just dive in as a scrapper, right? I mean, it just like, I didn't have that much defense. So we had to pull them and then kill them piecemeal. Defeat them piecemeal. And my point is that if I hadn't had Warrior's Challenge, I don't know if we would have been able to complete that mission in those days, as relatively new players of City of Heroes, and one of the first times we encountered Nemesis, right? I don't know that we would have been able to finish that mission, and we certainly would have had a lot more hospital runs, right, and rezzing. And so my point is that this situational power, which almost no scrapper would ever take, that was the linchpin of that mission. We succeeded at that mission because of that power. That power that everyone in City of Heroes looks down on and says you should take as a scrapper. Okay? And so what does this mean for situational powers? Well, I think the bottom line is that you don't want a situational power where the situation's never going to come up. But a lot of times, situational powers in the situation where they actually come up are dramatically superior to the general powers in the situation, right? So yes, Crane Kick and Storm Kick and Thunder Kick are way more useful than Warrior's Challenge most of the time, but they would have been utterly useless for ranged pulling and taunting when we needed that, right? Whereas Warrior's Challenge may not be that useful in most battles, but when you need it, it is way more useful than any other power in the game. Even solo, think about all of the times, and again, you can watch my Let's Plays to see this happen. All the times with my Scrappers and my Brutes, when I was able to taunt enemies and keep them off of stupid NPCs. Right? The dumb NPCs like General Z who get themselves killed, I can taunt and pull them onto me. I can fight one guy in melee and pull one of the other guys to me with Warrior's Challenge and keep them off of a vulnerable NPC who's stupid enough to aggro them, right? Fusionette, General Z, what's his name? Thunderhead, or whatever his name is. These are all characters, Lady Jane, that will die if you don't have some way to pull the aggro off of them because they wildly over aggro the enemies, right? Because that's just the way the AI is. They're stupid, right? And sometimes you can fail missions, although usually you can't. It doesn't fail. But sometimes you can fail missions if you don't protect the NPC. And Taunt lets you do it. It gives you an extra ranged pull while you're in melee with something else, because you like as a Scrapper or a Brute, you're not going to be able to ranged pull anything with your regular melee powers, right? So it's super helpful for that, and it's something that's superior to any of your other powers in that one situation, right? Think about my Stalkers, right? Go watch the Stalker Rant video where I don't remember which episode it is, but I'm trying to protect Doc Delilah, right? And I said I try to make a mini game out of it and see if I can protect her. But as a Stalker, I have no way to pull aggro. I was trying to keep her alive, but I couldn't because I had no way to pull aggro. Stalkers only can shed aggro, right, with placate and stuff. They can't pull it. And so many, many times, if you look at the NPCs, my Stalkers almost always lose the NPCs to the ambush if the ambush comes too fast, and the NPC can die because they can't pull aggro. So with a Stalker, like with Lady Jane, what I have to do is stalk through the whole mission and defeat everybody else so that nothing is left to attack her, right? And then she can maybe survive. But if a circumstance comes up where we over aggro and I have to try to pull something from her, I can't do it, right? Because I don't have that situational power that everybody says is not good enough to take that I have with my Stalker. And so I would argue, when you're building a character, when you're creating a character, I would argue that as you level up, not right at the beginning, you probably don't want to do this at, third level or novice rank in Savage Worlds, or, necessarily 250 points in Champions. But I would argue that as you level up and as you increase your power and your character gains some experience, it is worthwhile examining the concept of the character and the potential powers and abilities and skills and so on that you can get with the system that you're using, to see if there might be a few situational abilities that could perhaps be of some use in a case where a general use ability would not help you. Those can be often quite powerful and quite effective. And if you just take the position that no, situational powers are always bad, then there are many, many abilities, edges, powers, feats, traits, etc., that could be useful in a pinch that no one in your party will have access to if you guys all have the idea that we can only take, or we should only take, general use powers that are always useful. So I would say, folks, that it's a good idea to think about not only the general use case, but also the specific use case of individual edges or abilities or powers that might only work in certain circumstances, but boy, when they work, they can be extremely useful. So if we go back to Common Bond, yes, it's probably true that you're not going to use Common Bond more than once every few sessions. But, let's get the stone cleaner out. But when the time comes that you need it, right, you've got all your bennies left, and one or more of your teammates is out of bennies, and they're they just got wounded, and they already have 3 wounds, and they need to soak wounds, and they don't have a benny, and they're gonna die if they don't have that benny from you, and you've got a benny. You could save a party weight. It's not just saving that character. Sometimes it's a domino effect. That character goes down, and then the whole party goes down, right? Because that character is a linchpin, or is like, that's the healer, and the healer goes down, and then nobody gets healed, right? Or the tank goes down, and then everybody gets swarmed, and so you just never know when these situational abilities are going to come up. And I would say the ideal party, or the ideal group of player characters, posse, party, study group, whatever, depending on your game, what you're going to call it, has some general use powers. Everybody would have some. But then everybody should also have a few different highly specialized skills or abilities that are situational, that may not come up all the time, but when they come up, are super useful and really work much more effectively than the general use abilities. And so I definitely recommend considering getting a few situational abilities. The other thing I will say is everybody takes the general abilities. So taking situational abilities can often make your character feel much more unique and special, because you're going to have abilities nobody else has. Like I used to joke around I was probably the only martial arts reflex scrapper on the server, and certainly the only scrapper in my supergroup that bothered to take taunt, right? Warriors Challenge. And yet it made me very, very valuable on my supergroup, because I could do a ranged taunt and bring enemies to us when we needed to, and that kept the party alive, the team alive, many, many times. And I'm sure there are lots of other situational powers in other games that would do the same. So, my generalized advice to you is don't look down on situational powers and abilities. They can often be quite handy. Again, you don't want to make up a character that's just situational stuff, right? That's not what I'm saying, right? You don't want to make up a character that only has situational abilities, because then when none of those situations apply, you can't use any of your abilities. That would be silly, right? Like making a champion's character who's all their powers and the entire character sheet only work during a full moon at night, at midnight. Yeah, that's not going to be a good character. But you can make up characters that have generalized abilities and then a few good ones, right, that only work under certain circumstances. And when they do work, it's super helpful, and that allows you to solve a problem or handle a situation that the average generalized party wouldn't, because they don't have this super specialized situational ability. So my advice is don't look down your nose at situational abilities. Always consider having a few in your character, because it makes your character unique, and also will make your character extremely useful when that unique situation comes up. So we got the statue mostly clean, but I think we're going to stop here. That's enough for this rant. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been Power Wash Simulator.